So, welcome to the next session. The power of the platform. The clicker works too, that's great. My name is Daniel Jonathan Wellick. I'm part of the Skype for Business product team. Next to me is Andy. Yeah, hi Andy. So in the next 75 minutes, or actually 73 minutes, we talk about a couple of very interesting things. First of all, our developer opportunities. We will talk about the new Web SDK preview that we have. We will also talk about what or how you can use our set of SDKs and APIs to create custom experiences and to extend capabilities, features of Skype for Business, and to build very unique and customized scenarios. So last week we had the Build conference in San Francisco, and let me probably ask, who was at the Build conference in San Francisco last week?
You don't count.
You don't count. You don't count. Anyone else? Just raise your hand. Okay, next year you need to come, okay? So, very important. But maybe let me start with also another question. So, how many of you are using Link 2013 today? Have they deployed an organization? Okay. How many of you did the upgrade to Skype for Business? Okay.
Nice.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay. So, that's great. Hopefully the Skype developer platform excites you so much that you do the upgrade afterwards, okay? So I said before a couple of things that we want to talk about in this session. And very important, when you leave the session today, what we really would like to achieve is that you know what is the Skype developer platform, also where you can find resources, how you can get into the Skype Web SDK, how can you start basically to do something, and what are the capabilities around, and how you can build applications, and how can you use Skype and Skype for Business for this, okay? So that's our deal. We will drive you through, and hopefully you get all the content. If not, we are here for questions then afterwards, and then more than happy actually to go in some conversations. Okay, let me probably talk about the history. That's kind of very interesting, because if you see where we're going to with all our universal communication, Skype for Business, and cloud, it's very interesting to see where we're coming from. I think I'm fading out here. So first of all, if you think about Microsoft, we started a very long time ago to build the first communication capabilities in our software stack. So I joined basically Microsoft around 10 years ago, when we moved from the first steps in terms of communication with NetMeeting and some other tools into the first platform that we called Live Communication Server 2003. And then later on we had Live Communication Server 2005, where we basically implemented presence information and instant messaging capabilities and more real-time communication capabilities on the platform. And that was the move from Microsoft into this kind of great unified communications environment, where we also built basically not only synchronous, also asynchronous, or the other way, communication capabilities. So the term unified communication was born when we came up with Office Communication Server 2007 and R2. And I remember it was a great time. I was in Europe, so you probably can hear some accent. I'm from Austria. And we started to roll out OCS 2007 around small and large customer environments. And at the time, a lot of our customers asked for, can I integrate my current PBX system? Can I integrate my video conferencing system? But also partners and customers ask for, how can I customize and how can I extend features that you actually have in your platform? So I would say that basically born the first, not really developer platform, but developer opportunities around our great unified communication platform. So as I said, we worked with a ton of customers around the globe and partners to make the integration happen of legacy environment, bring in features and capabilities also from line of business applications, and basically push the ROI that we have with our platform even further for our customers. So later on, we acquired Skype, and that's actually a very important milestone, because think about Skype is a great communication technology on the consumer side. At the time, we had around 300 million connected users, using from instant messaging and audio and video and some other capabilities in the Skype consumer side. So Skype entered the family of unified communications, and we started, as you know, of course, to change the name, to go from Link 2013, after a very successful platform of Link 2010, to Skype for Business. So Skype and Skype for Business are now our basically unified communication platforms, one more on the consumer side, another one on the business side. However, you will see in the session that you can communicate and you can also customize from Skype to Skype for Business, and that's a big story on the Skype developer platform because you get enabled across 2 different environments, or 2 different areas. So what we can see from Microsoft perspective, but also together with our customers and partners, is that this is where really universal communication comes together. So Skype is available on any kind of platform. From browser, from basically desktop, from third-party systems, right? Where we talk about, for example, Apple Watch or Android and iOS and so on. And Skype for Business in the same way, because Skype for Business runs on third-party appliances, meeting devices. There's so much where you can actually use our technology to communicate, go into a meeting, and so on. So in the history of from unified to universal communications, you will see more and more upcoming in the next years. Because we including more capabilities, we're extending the features that we already have between Skype for Business and Skype. And as you know, we're moving from on-premise into the cloud. So we think about a very bright future, especially together with our partners that building apps, vertical gap apps, and customization on the top of our platform. Okay, so from 300 million connected users at the time when we acquired Skype, we went to almost 380 million connected users. And it's not only Microsoft employees, okay? So way more users that we have on our platform today as ever. And as I said before, not only on devices that you already know, but also on some new stuff you can see Skype. So if you, for example, have seen the video of HoloLens, where you see virtual reality and you communicate with Skype to someone, and you can see it in front of you. This is a small taste of the future that we see in the next couple of years. So connecting people across work and life, that's really what's happening, because so many users or people using Skype on the consumer side, and now we're actually having a way to connect them to Skype for Business, not only with IM, but also with audio and video, and we will explain it a little bit later, and with customization on the top to create this custom experience across work and life. So I think that's a very unique and exciting opportunity. And that brings us to the opportunity itself, right? Because first of all, customization is a great thing. Why? We have very specific requirements in some of the markets. So think about healthcare, think about contact center, think about financial, right? Where you talk about specific features, security features, compliance, even the change of a user interface. Or bring some of the capabilities, for example, into the browser or into the mobile environment, right? Or on a mobile device. So the Skype Developer Platform offers you this opportunity to dive into the SDKs, take the APIs, and actually create those custom experiences. Also, sell maybe applications to customers, right? Or to scale for Office 365 later on when we are there with our API store in the cloud. And we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes as well. So I talked about Skype and Skype for Business. So you have opportunities on both sides. That might be very important to highlight because Microsoft decommissioned in past the SDK that we had on the consumer side. And for a time, we were really limited on opportunities and how you can customize any kind of communication scenarios that you have with the Skype consumer client. So that changes. You will see later on some of the mechanisms that allow you to, again, create customized scenarios on the consumer side and connect to the business side. And it's just a start. There will be even more in the next couple of months and years. Okay, Skype for Business development is all around, it's not only about video. I mentioned it before, right? Everyone probably knows you can start with IM, you can do audio and video. A lot of consumer, or a big part of our consumer customers on the consumer side, using Skype for just video chat or for conferencing or for group calling, things like that. But there's more, because the customization and also the communication mechanism that you have is really from IM, audio, voice, so audio, video, and there will be more also in future. Okay, the Skype Web SDK is basically the first step, right? Because we had a lot of great opportunities with Link 2013 to provide your customization on the platform, maybe to create some web apps with IM and presence and so on. But the Skype Web SDK is a different approach. It delivers more. And Andy will show you later on how we can build applications with all the capabilities. And again, just a start because we're adding more. And we'll talk about it. So from a layer, oops, let me see that. So from the communication capabilities that you have, I mentioned before a couple of things. So first of all, we are great on all the things on how you can communicate, right? So from voice and IM and sharing and presence and meetings. but also the ability to manage the environment on the network side, on the infrastructure side, on the directory side, up to security and so on, right? And to global address book, where we have all the consumer that are connected to Skype, basically connected, and you can call someone, right? So Skype for Business is today on-premise, and a lot of our customers using on-premise, but we're moving into the cloud. And we added with Skype for Business a lot of new features. Think about voice, think about broadcasting, think about BI and reporting, some recording features that are coming up for cloud, and so on, right? So Skype for Business is not only the change of the user interface and the next generation of our UC platform, and also improvement on how we communicate and codecs and how we operate on the network side. It's also that a lot of new stuff is coming up. And not only on-premise, also for cloud.
And I think with the cloud, one of the things that's also interesting to talk about is you've seen all the information coming out about Office 365, Office as a platform, Office Graph. These are all opportunities that you really think about as connecting with your development framework with Skype for Business to really be able to start building a much richer set of capabilities and a richer set of scenarios.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So myself, I'm using a Surface. I'm having a Windows phone. I have an Xbox at home that I actually never use because there's no time. I'm having a TV, right? As usually probably every one of you, right? So if I think about Skype, and I think about the opportunities to communicate, Skype, but also Skype for Business, is available on almost every platform, as I mentioned before, right? So if you, for example, have an iWatch or Apple iWatch, right? There's a Skype app where you can communicate. There are a lot of third-party devices. So we had many conversations with TV manufacturers where they're actually integrating Skype natively or as app in their TV, and you can communicate out of the living room, right? We've done the same with Xbox. So there's so many opportunities on how you can deploy and customize in future our communication capabilities, and that brings us also to a lot of opportunities for third party, but I will talk about that in a second.
I think one of the things that's key, and that you can sort of ask the question, you know, Link has such a history of being able to drive custom development with different technologies. What's the perspective with the Skype development platform? And I think the key thing to really take away is that as we're really thinking about how Skype and Skype for Business move forward in this sort of unified brand around communications, we're also taking a unified perspective around how you develop and the types of solutions that you want to build. So knowing, for example, that a lot of times in the past, when you've been building with Link, you've been building solutions for inside of your company, and you've been sort of thinking more very targeted around things like contact center. We really want to think much more broadly about how you're connecting both the internal and the external audiences, but doing it in a way that makes sense for your development, that doesn't require you to think about drastically different programming paradigms and models. So we're starting with a foundation, and we're really going to be looking to build that in a very unified way as we move forward in the future. So that's an important aspect to really take away from this, is it is about converging not just the product offerings, but in fact the developer offerings as well.
Mm-hmm. And that brings us to opportunities with partners. So I would say with basically in the time frame of Office Communication Service, we started this investment into the partner ecosystem. So for example, on ISVs and integration partners and how we make the bridge into third-party or appliances, right, and so on. And with Skype for Business, you can really see we are approaching that partners can build more on the top of our platform. So appliances, devices that are actually using our stack embedded, right? If you think about the Link Room system, for example, or the Skype for Business room system. Or in future, because we're moving into the cloud and still, of course, investing on-premise, but also have the ability or target the ability for partners that they can use their own cloud environment and connect with their custom services, with their custom development into our Office 365 Skype for Business online cloud to actually create those custom experiences that they actually then afterwards bring forward to customers. So a very important question that we always receive, and that actually I received before we started the session is, so what is with the stuff that I built potentially on Link?
We're just going to get rid of it all, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Would that be okay? Can we just not?
A little bit later maybe, right? But for now, that's actually a very important point. For now, we're supporting apps that you created on Link 2013, let's say on UCMA, on the Server SDK, the SDK itself, or UCWA, for example, right? Or Client SDK. So if you created those custom experiences, and you're upgrading your Skype for Business, of course you might want to test your application, but we do support the way from Link 2013 to Skype for Business, and your app should potentially work, but please test it, right?
Maybe as a quick question, how many of you have UCMA solutions in your deployments today? about half of you. So yeah, good. So recognize that one of the things with in-place upgrade that we announced with Skype for Business Server is it means that those solutions will continue to work.
Yes.
So that's an important statement we want to make sure you guys understand taking away.
Perfect. Oh, there's a question. Okay.
What about Link 2010 to Skype?
So we answer one question, then the rest I would suggest we doing after the session. What is with Link 2010?
So the question is what is the support story for Link 2010 to come forward? The basic story that we're talking about there is primarily to upgrade to Link 2013 first, and then you're able to upgrade in place to Skype for Business Server. So basically what that gives you a chance to do, and let me maybe say it this way, is plan the network the way that you want to as part of basically deploying your new pools for 2013. And then at that point when you do your Skype for Business upgrade, you don't have to redesign the network. It's just going to basically use what's there today.
And if you're not familiar with the Link 2013 SDKs and APIs, don't worry. So we have a great new website on MSDN that explains all the changes that we implemented, all the things that you can do with Link 2013 up to Skype for Business. So just have a look. You find actually a very similar slide on it, and then you can dive into some details. Most partners that I have worked with created server application or contact center application or extensions on the server through UCMA or through the server SDK. Wrote, for example, zip applications on the server side. A lot of our partners also wrote client extensions, right? So if you think about embedded CRM or help desk client or agent desktop, something like that, right? A lot of our partners have done that, and sure, you want to test it, but basically it looks similar on the Skype for Business side. So if I show you now as next what we actually have on the Skype for Business, Skype Developer Platform, then you can see we have UCWA, we have the server SDK, the client SDK, UCWA. So we have a lot of things from 2013 still in Skype for Business and the Skype Developer Platform. And if I curve out the new things that we have, then basically you can see from dark blue, the Link 2013 color, into the Skype color. We have new versions on UCWA, new versions on UCMA. We have the Web SDK, and basically also SDN interface, which is improved from Link 2013. Federation capabilities that are definitely there, not only from Skype to Skype for Business, but also the interoperability. And we have also the opportunity that you integrate video conferencing or video conferencing technology with Skype for Business through this. Okay, Andy.
So one of the questions that comes up quite a bit with respect to the platform is you know, the technologies are there, I can build the back-end solutions. UCWA was sort of a good step forward, Link 2013, RESTful service. But then the natural question that we get all the time is,
what is the new thing? What is with cloud? What is with mobile?
What do I do with web? What do I do with mobile? So wanted to just sort of do a quick recap. We have a lot of existing customers and a lot of people that have deployed Link already today, but I do want to sort of just level set about sort of what's available and how are we sort of moving forward from that. One of the key things to think about is that with respect to what you can do right now, obviously you have UCWA, but there's also, because of the Skype for Business interop that we have, there's actually new opportunities to use some technologies that maybe haven't been as familiar for you around things like the Skype button and how you can start to use Skype URIs to drive behavior and easy calling back to your clients. So to jump in on that, what we wanted to do is just maybe sort of show you a couple of quick refreshers about what this is. UCWA is a foundation for us about how we're going to drive RESTful service interop. And as we sort of move this forward, you'll see that we're going to take this model of being able to think about the persisted assets on your server, whether it's people, calendar, things like that, and be able to actually have that interaction model that allows you to very quickly not only retrieve those in standard sort of RESTful get, put types of operations, but in fact being able to have that event channel that you can now communicate back to and deal with things like real-time notifications for persisted gets. This becomes sort of a foundation for us, and in 2013 we basically delivered a set of sort of client wrappers for this. Now, REST is super important, and as you've seen with Office Graph and some of the other news that has come out from the keynotes over the last 2 weeks between Build and Ignite, this RESTful model we think is the foundation for us really to move forward. But it also sort of asks the question about sort of, I want to do some other things, and it is really sort of focused on a specific target set around signaling, so how can I do sort of more with that? Now, sort of on the other end of the spectrum, we have the Skype button and the Skype UI. And this is actually a tool that you can actually very easily add to your site. It does use a script, and it does use a plugin from the Skype side that allows you to quickly add calls and chats to your site to be able to connect your customers with you without having to do a bunch of explicit coding. It does support audio, video, and chat. And one of the sort of maybe less known features is that it actually is dynamic. So you're actually able to generate this HTML effectively on the fly to be able to do things like, hey, if I've selected a contact record, let's say somebody in accounting or somebody in support or somebody in billing, I can actually, based on that selection, then choose which Skype identity I want to be able to call. Now, this is also important, though, because now once you've got these identities, you have the ability to start connecting these across the network. Now, just to give you sort of a quick feel of what this sort of looks like, what we wanted to do was to kind of just walk you through some of the pieces that we have there today. So first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and switch over to 7. So we have the site around UCWA. Now, this is going to be something that we're going to be evolving to a new site called ucwa.skype.com. But today I have the ability to actually go ahead and do a quick sort of interactive piece. I can get started with this. You'll notice that as part of getting started, I can go ahead and choose sort of the identities that I'm going to be able to use. And you can see here that really the key thing is that as I'm changing presence, you'll notice that it actually shows you in line sort of which messages I'm able to actually send as part of setting presence for that. Now, this is a very RESTful model. If you've deployed the service, you probably have seen some of these things today. And this model actually is really useful. However, it also requires that you are very explicitly understanding the various interaction patterns and which message you have to send first and which message you have to send second and things like that. So it's a very specific piece that has a lot of value but also requires a lot of expertise and a lot of knowledge about how you put these things together. Now, the model that we have then with Skype button is interesting. So actually we're going to have a different sort of perspective here. Let's go ahead and switch to a common problem. So how many of you have sent a URL to somebody over your phone in messaging before? Probably about everybody, right? Very common sort of pattern. So Daniel, I think, is going to show us a sort of a quick model here for how this might look if I was going to try and connect to my customer and allow them to do free calling.
So let me start a Skype client here. And I can see here in the messaging conversation history.
I sent him a link.
You sent me a link. Absolutely right, yeah. Let me click on the link here. Zip. Yep. And you know, it's a lot of walking, right? Build conference and Ignite conference. My actually shoes are pretty much over.
We won't comment on the color choice, though.
Yeah, I like pink. So I can see the shoe here. I can also see a call button in the right corner. And if I like the shoe for the $129 in pink that I do, then I can click here the call button. And what happens is that I get the notification that I'm capable to do a voice call here from the client to the agent, because probably I have a question on, hey, do you have the same shoe also in black or green or whatever? Otherwise, I take it in pink. And as soon as I do this, I click here the call button. Let me do that again. Okay, perfect.
And so now I've got the Skype client running on my machine that allows me to actually take these calls. And so obviously once it connects, I'm able to now have both a voice conversation and a video conversation. Here's the call.
In our example, the agent is really far away.
So there's the phone.
Okay.
There's my phone being able to actually take the information over from the site. And if we wanted to, we could add video to this. And so this is just a sort of a quick way to be able to say, hey, I don't necessarily even have to worry about if I'm dealing with small business or something. I can actually use Skype to be able to just connect and call very rapidly. Now, so again, these work for a particular set of situations. This is technology that we've had released for about a year. But as we've improved the Skype and Skype for Business Federation, these things now start to become sort of more available to be able to start using and thinking about while you're putting those together. So with that, the other thing is that as we move forward then, there's opportunities for you to think about not just basic URLs, but in fact taking advantage of some of that business messaging to be able to now start having a richer discussion. So in this case, Dana also sent some information to him. And you can see that now we've got actually different things going on here. So we've actually got some rich video messaging that we can do. We've actually got the ability to show a richer version of that URL preview that allows us to not just show the image, but in fact some information that we've pulled off of that particular site.
And I can also see I got a video message here, right? So if I click on the play button here, and here play again, you can see one of our colleagues in the first row. And she tells me probably something about the pink color on the shoe.
Yeah.
I'm sure you like it. Okay. So the next thing is that I can see the shoe basically in the conversation history, and let's say I want to make the call to the agent again, right? I could basically click on the URL and on the picture here, and you would see I get the same page, I get the same call button in the right corner. Basically from the information I have in the conversation history, from the product itself that I see, I could make a call to the agent, get routed into the, let's say, call center or contact center, and then to the first developer agent, where I can probably choose a different color.
So now you can see you can start to pull and use these capabilities to bring mobile into the story. So now what does this actually start to look like inside of your site? Part of this is your ability to actually view this across different browsers. You can see I can have the same button here, be able to call, but in this case it uses my local piece. If I were to actually sort of take a look at some of the source here real quick, you can actually see that I've actually got the ability to do this very easily. So in this case, what we're actually using is first of all, you can see that all that rich sharing basically came because I added some standard meta tags to my site to be able to now have that pop and make the client interesting and more usable. Now these happen to be tags that are sort of emerging as a collective standard. So Twitter has some. We're basically able to use some of the Twitter tags. So if you've marked up your site for sharing a markup for social networks, that will work inside of Skype as well. And so that's a great way to try and pull some of that data in. And then if you look actually down at the bottom, all of that behavior about being able to call was all enabled basically by this ability to have this Skype button, this Skype.ui, which basically controls the UI showing up, the configuration of that particular UI, and the other pieces that are here. Now, like I said, this is experience that's available today. It might be interesting for your particular business situation. It might not be totally applicable. The reason that we're talking about it is A, it's something that you should at least consider if it's available, and B is that as we bring these platforms together, these types of UI controls will continue to have more of these with more flexibility as we move forward. And so really this is a pattern that we want you to start thinking about as establishing, which is my ability to very easily add controls that allow me to integrate Skype into really any experience that I have.
And by the way, if you don't want to write the script or the code here, there's a Skype button side where you can create your own button. It generates the script, and you can just copy it in your application or in your website.
Exactly. Great. So we'll go back to
275.
Question on that. Does Northwind Traders then get your Skype user ID, and are they able to call you back? And if you don't want them to call you back, is there a way to be anonymous about it?
So the question was, is if I do that call, does Northwind Trader somehow get my ID, and then am I going to be able to call them back, and then sort of what happens? So one of the nice things about Skype is that to have a full video call, you would want to have the contact established. It is actually possible for you to do basic phone calls to contacts that you haven't added into your contact list yet. It does require that you as the vendor have set yourself up to be open to incoming calls, right? So at that point, then yes, that identity will be established. Now, this is part of the thing that we look at. We say, as we look into more of the consumer to business scenarios, that ability to sort of keep that identity sort of where you want it. In some cases, you want anonymity. In other cases, you want to be able to actually use that identity to actually accelerate the conversation. Oh, hey, Joe, I saw you called yesterday. Happy to see you. Like, what's going on? How can I help you? So it's about sort of finding that balance, I think, between the two. Great. So we've shown you basically that we have the existing assets inside of Link 2013 that we're building on. We've shown you that we have sort of a framework that we're starting to fill in. Part of that is as we build out this RESTful services-based approach, we're building out this model with UCWA and the RESTful service that we think about that covers things like authentication and signaling and your ability to access persistent data. And what you should expect to see from us as we go forward here is that this really becomes part of the overall Office graph sort of hierarchy that you have. So as you're accessing meetings, you're accessing calendar and appointments and attachments, these are all things that you'll do in a more integrated way across all of Office 365, including Skype for Business. And you've also seen then that we've started to build a model with Skype Button, which is about how you can quickly and easily add communications into your web experiences without even necessarily having all of the sort of clients deployed. But it sort of leaves that gap in the middle, right? So this is why we're very excited about the announcement that we had last week about the Skype Developer Platform Web SDK, or the Skype Web SDK as we sort of colloquially call it. And what's cool about this is it actually not only sort of helps to fill in that middle gap, but it actually is a framework for us to really move forward. So part of that is about being able to take the model for chat and presence and things that you used to be able to do with UCWA and now make that very usable in an HTML5 standard way so that any HTML5 developer should be able to very quickly jump in, start using this, and start building their apps. We've been very encouraged in the last few weeks to see a lot of developers, as they jump into this, go from sort of 0 to 60 with a solution very, very quickly. So we think it's a great way to get started. However, it also provides a really new set of capabilities that are important. One of these is about voice, without having to actually install the whole client. So whereas with UCWA, you were limited to signaling, with the Web SDK, we've added media. Now, we haven't just added calling, we've actually added calling and video. We haven't just added calling and video, we've actually added one-to-one video and multi-party video. So we have an opportunity and a framework now to be able to really move this forward so that you can think about one-to-one calls, joining conferences, being able to support multi-party video, all of those things without having to have the full Skype for Business desktop client installed. And the ability to now, in fact, also now introduce some new capabilities like the ability to pass application context when you start the session. So we'll show an example of that in a minute, but the ability for me to now start to describe what kind of conversation I want to have when I spin those things up becomes very, very important. So you can see then that basically what we've done is we're now extending this model so that we can fill in those gaps and provide this story with the Web SDK. Now, we've talked about sort of what this is, but obviously, like most things, it's much better to see it in action. We think there's a lot of opportunities. One of the cooler ones I've heard so far was about automated garage attendant. But there's a lot of things that you can sort of pull in here, video kiosks, even thinking about presence. How many of you have wanted to add presence into various sites and pages in your internal network and haven't been able to do it because it requires that you've now got to deploy the desktop everywhere, right? So you now have a way to be able to add presence very easily, and we'll show you how to do that in just a few minutes. So just to give you a taste, we have put together a nice little sort of sample site that basically shows you how we think some of these things could start to come together. Now the basic piece here is that we are going to show you a situation where I am a customer and I am looking for, wait for it, any guesses? Shoes.
Ah, so I can buy
shoes
here again. Okay, great.
Yay. All right, so Daniel is continuing to be on the quest for shoes.
Okay.
So, Daniel, let's talk about shoes. Now, the cool thing is that he has found a custom shoe site. Anybody ever wanted to have shoes that was just tailor-built for them? Mm-hmm. We thought that was kind of interesting.
It's absolutely my style of shoe, my favorite shoe site. So I see here this wonderful shoe, and of course the most important decision here, I'm male here. This is a male shoe that I need, right? So next. The next thing is, you know, as I said, a lot of walking, Build conference. There's another conference next week, and here the Ignite conference. So let's say we are on the road a lot, right? Next. So now I have the option. I'm not entirely sure about the shoe. Maybe they have another model or something. So I can talk to an agent. And
now, before you do that, let's just show. So on the other side of this, what we also have is we have sort of our quick agent experience. And you notice that right now, I'm waiting. I'm waiting for the call. I'm trying to get it set up. And I know nothing. I know nothing about what Daniel's been doing or his history for that. Mm-hmm. So now that I know nothing, part of that presence, part of that context passing now becomes an opportunity for me to get smarter really fast.
Mm-hmm. So let me...
So great. So he's clicked next.
Oops, sorry about that. Yeah.
No, let's restart that.
Give me a moment here. A second here. Video, next. Perfect. So what we can see here now in the right corner is that for a very short period of time we had the Skype window.
Preview.
Preview, exactly. Let me do it one more time again. You know what, that can happen if you buy a shoe, right?
Actually, let's just go back to the
okay.
thing.
There we go. Let's try it. Okay, okay. One more time. Next. Joop. Ta-da. Perfect.
Hey, there we go.
Oh, great. Okay, so I'm calling the agent.
And video here is going to show up in a second. Now, obviously, one of the things we're going to continue to be doing is making sure that we're optimizing sort of performance here, but I can see Daniel. Daniel can see me. Now, one of the things I want to just point out real quick as we sort of jump here is that you'll notice that I went to being sort of pretty smart pretty fast, because now you can see that, in fact, I've got this ability to see that he actually is picking male shoes, and he's picking track. So track is pretty good. That's pretty good. So why don't you tell me about your arches, Daniel?
Yeah, you know, I'm searching for something modern, very comfortable. So maybe you can help me with that. Maybe a different color, right? Blue-green is pretty okay, but maybe something different.
So let's talk about sort of what frequency of shoes you're thinking about. And so as part of being able to do that, go ahead and let's pick your shoes, your arch.
Okay. So I would say, let's see, maybe medium sounds great.
Okay?
Okay, I do that here. Click on next. So let's talk about the color. That's the most important thing for me.
Yeah,
okay?
color.
'Cause I want to be really cool. Right?
Okay, sounds good. But you know, actually, if I think about it, so it looks like you've got male and track, and you had a medium arch and medium frequency. Have you thought about maybe actually looking at some cross trainers?
Not yet, but let me. Oh, perfect. Yeah.
So
That's
now,
great.
this is an opportunity for you to be able to actually use these messaging sessions to start doing effectively co-authoring with your clients. So my ability to now have these suggestions that I can push back. It's not quite co-browsing, but it's actually driving the experience directly in line. So what do you think about that black and green?
It's a good start, but maybe I want to change the color back to. Yeah,
Purple?
Yeah, it looks
if you're
great,
going to
yeah.
do purple, though, then why don't we actually do sort of the gray top? That's not a.
That's much better.
That's better, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, very good.
Cool.
Well, so if you're happy with that, then why don't we go ahead and get you checked out?
Let's click on next.
So great.
Perfect.
All right, glad I could help.
$130, nothing.
$130. Hey, man, gray and purple shoes, those are
Great
pretty
shoe,
good.
that's great, yeah.
All right, so great. Come on, let's get a clap for that one. All right, so at that point, he can hang up. He's done with me. He gets to buy the shoes. I'm happy. He's happy. We're happy with shoes. So that's very, very cool. Now, this is demo. What does this look like for what you guys actually have to go and build? Now, we talked about the partner ecosystem. We talked about sort of the benefits of how those things come together. And we were fortunate enough to have one of our partners that has been working with us on both the Web SDK and the overall platform together. And so I wanted to go ahead and actually introduce Dan Gardner. And I'm going to actually hand him my mic so that he and Daniel can talk.
Real loud, but they like the mic better.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So I'm going to give him that. And we'll go with that from there.
Okay. Switch slide. Okay. So then tell me, so Clarity, right? So probably everyone knows Clarity, but what are you actually doing with the Skype Developer Platform and with Skype for Business?
Sure. So just to start off, what Clarity Connect is so you got a great application. Skype for Business, Link 2013. It's great for two-party calls, and it's great for conference calls. But when you want to extend that to have a more integrated experience, use that in a more rich context. Maybe use some sort of intelligent IVR. That's where you need some sort of extension that can sit on top of it. Now, in the OCS, the Link 2010, Link 2013 world, what you were able to do is create UCMA applications that extend the functionality. When a caller calls in, you can run them through some sort of automated attendance. You can do voice recognition. You can do DTMF responses. You can even do things like looking up ticketing information, CRM information. You can have intelligent routing based on what agents are online if you have information about the presence of the people that are able to answer those calls. So if you're able to use that advanced information, then you're able to route the call much more effectively. You can send the call to agents that have the skills, that maybe haven't taken a call in a while, and by combining that information, you're able to connect the customer to somebody who can answer their question immediately on the first try. And when customers can get their questions answered quickly, they're going to be much happier with the experience. So we've built over the past 6 years a product built on top of Link 2010, 2013 that allows you to do this. We use the extension functionality of the Link client so that when the agents receive the call, they're receiving it on their standard Link client. They receive the standard toast notification, and they're looking at their normal Link window. What we're able to do is extend that window as well to include some customer care solution specific functionality. Now, you've got the basic transfers and being able to invite certain people in using a standard Link client, But what if you need to be able to transfer it to a queue rather than a person? What if you want to have a supervisor be able to join the call? What we're able to do is extend that client using the same window where you would see a normal screen share or a video, and have our own application that provides context about the caller. We have context about previous times they've called in, any CRM records, tickets that they've opened in the past, and then information is all available immediately to the agent so they can help the customer very quickly. So you asked about the Skype Web API, and we have always been very focused on building an experience that's very tailored. It builds the experience around what the users need to be able to see so that they can get on with their day and do their job most effectively. So what we've spent the past couple months doing for this newest release, if you could change video, is to build this dashboard. Now, when you're working in a customer care center, there's a huge amount of information that you need to be able to look at. You might have a queue like accounts receivable. Their calls are taking really long time to get answered. And so we need to put some more agents on that queue so that instead of getting complaints from customers, we can proactively put more people on there, get those calls through faster so that the customers have a better experience. This gives you an at-a-glance view so you can look at, OK, you're green, you're yellow, you're red. But it also allows you to drill down much further. You can see a huge amount of metrics. You can see, OK, let's see how he's doing. Let's go back to support. I think Frederick, yeah. So yeah, he's been busy today. He's got a whole bunch of stuff going on. And all this is available at a really quick, glanceable view. With the link client extensibility functionality, we've got the standard link window, and we've got our extension. What we wanted to do is build that same functionality that we designed with this dashboard and build that Skype functionality, the ability to answer a call, have it be a seamless experience into that same window. And so what we did is include Skype for Business client in this window. So we have a Skype consumer client right here that's calling in. This could be from home. It could be a mobile client. It could be a PSTN call. It could be another Skype for Business client coming from internal. But in this case, it's a Skype consumer client that's calling in. They get routed through the intelligent IVR. And we've decided that Frederick Bozeman is the best person to answer this call. So when I'm sitting at this window, I can see at the very top, as soon as the call comes in and is routed to me, I have a notification. I'm stretching out my words until it comes up.
Call center's busy.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man. They need to get their work in order.
I can see the call. Okay. Again? Okay, let me call again.
I blame the networks.
Yeah, live demos are always risky, but you guys know that.
There we go. So I can see that there's a call coming in for Frederick. I can see that it's coming from the support queue. And as the agent, I can also see about how long I have to answer that question until I get a Rona. But since I'm a good agent, I'm going to answer that call. Now, as soon as I answer it, in the same window where I'm able to monitor everything else that's going on in the contact center, I'm also able to interact with this caller. I can see who's calling in. I can see information about them. If I want to, I can send them messages, which can be especially useful if you need to send any links, any confirmation numbers back and forth, because speaking those back and forth, getting those right can be kind of tough. But because we're going through another client that has that instant messaging channel, we're able to have that distinct notification. But in addition, I can say, all right, let's check on help desk. All right, they're back up to 50%. They're doing a little bit better. And I can just flip right back to that session as I'm still interacting with the customer. Now, two things that I want to point out here. First of all, if you look at the top here, this is all the call control functionality. In the standard link client and the Skype client, you've got one set of controls that's based in the client, and one set that we're extending to do the additional functionality that the client doesn't support. What the agent doesn't see here is that the mute button is interacting with the Skype for Business web API. It's placing their own audio on mute, but the hold button that's right next to it, even though it looks like it's exactly the same, that's sending a message to the Clarity Connect backend saying, all right, put the call on hold. Let's start monitoring how long it's on hold. We have complete control over what music is being played to the customer, and it allows us to have a complete control over the interaction. From the agent's perspective, it's a single set of unified controls, but on the back end, it can do whatever we want because we have complete control over the user experience. Now, let's just say that, Frederick, I'm a good agent, I answered my call, but I think I might need some help figuring out what to do with it. So what I can do is go and do a standard contact search, and this is going through the same search functionality that you would have in your Link or Skype client, Searching your Active Directory, it brings back presence for each contact, as well as information about any endpoints that they have configured. Now, the one thing that's kind of cool here is, in addition to contacts brought back by the API, since we have complete control over this interface, we can inject Clarity Connect specific concepts. So you'll see here that I have the sales queue in here. The sales queue has absolutely nothing to do with Skype. We're injecting that. We're able to tell the agent how many agents are online, how many agents are available, so I know not to send the caller to that queue if there's nobody that can take it. So because we have control, we can include all this information in one place that, from the agent's perspective, it's absolutely seamless. In addition, since this, let's see if I can type quickly. Since this is using the API, we're also able to subscribe to presence. Spelled that right. So I can see right now it's showing me as busy, and if I then change my presence to available, since we're getting those update notifications through the Skype for Web API, I can then see on the client it's going to flip to available. It's all subscribed very easily, all the contacts that are configured in the client available in one easy place for the agent. But okay, so let's say that actually I figured it out. I don't need anybody's help, but I really want to make sure that this agent gets a fully customized, very personalized experience. And so one way to do that is to include video in it. Now, go ahead. One thing to keep in mind, this is again from the Skype consumer client, going to a computer that has the agent interacting with the call completely independent from the actual Skype client. There's only the web browser that's interacting with the audio, with the video, and the instant messaging. We're able, if I pop back in his window, and I'll actually flip it over to Andrew, and we can see that both the agent and the customer are able to interact. They've got video, they've got audio, they've got instant messaging. The agent has complete context about the caller, all in a single web page where I'm also monitoring everything else that's happening with the interaction, all powered by the Skype Web API. And I'll tell you, this is incredibly simple to implement. We've got a team of, let's see back to mine. We've got a team of people, some of whom have worked extensively with JavaScript functionalities in HTML5, some of whom have not. The people that were familiar with it, they picked it up very quickly because it uses a consistent formatting scheme. The people that were not familiar with it were able to pick it up very quickly because it uses a very logical hierarchical structure in all the processes that are set up here. UCL made you be able to do it. Skype Web API makes you able to do it easier and with more functionality. So we're really excited about being able to push this out to agents and include the same functionality on the customer side so the customer can interact with audio and video using nothing more than their web browser as well, all being powered by the Skype Web API. So we're really excited to see how it turns out.
Awesome. Now, one of the things that's really cool about that is so we've built demos. He's built some actual real code. So how hard is it for you guys to try and get started with some of that? So let's talk about that briefly, and let's think about sort of how this SDK is sort of made up. I'm going to talk about it at a okay level. I'm going to use this as an explicit pitch to say if you want to get into more detail, Shri and David here in the front are going to do an awesome job tomorrow at actually drilling in and showing you if you want to start writing code tomorrow, go to that session and they'll get you basically started with those things. Now, what you saw is an actual integrated end-to-end experience. That's your code. That's you being able to pull those things in, and you want to pull communications in a way that makes sense. Our really expectation with the Web SDK is about being able to bring this in with a set of easy-to-use HTML script, object model that can make sense so that you understand kind of how everything connects together, an ability to have UX controls that can start to actually make it easier for you to accelerate sort of the look and feel and have some of that consistency, and then to be able to actually start connecting to not just signaling from sort of a coordination and the server perspective, but also media, and the ability for you to actually have integrated authentication that integrates with your identity providers. So that ability to have those back-end services is actually incredibly important, and it's a key part whether you're looking at any of sort of the media stacks or any of the other providers. Having that flexibility really allows you to sort of make the right choice. Now, a couple of things to talk about on the media side is that we obviously aspire to, in fact, support a broad range of media stacks. For the purposes of the web today, and for the preview that we have delivered that's actually available right now up on developer.skype.com, we are primarily focusing on two things that I want to just make sure we're all clear about. We are focusing on enabling you as on-premises customers to basically get started with this and try this out. You can deliver this and host this on pages that are delivered to the external customer, but it really is about interacting with your on-premises server to start, using the Skype for Business plugin that you would also use for your Skype for Business web app and your conference joins. And it is basically early days for our UX controls. But the definition of us for in preview is about getting the core really landed, and then we fully expect to be moving very aggressively with additional previews as we go through the year to be able to deliver more of those capabilities back to that UX controls and to the media. Now, let's talk about media for a second, because this is always sort of an interesting topic when it comes to media over the web. And so I wanted, Daniel, maybe you can talk a little bit briefly about sort of where we're at on the WebRTC side.
That's a very interesting question, because WebRTC is something that is evolving right now. So if you look into the market, a lot of companies are talking about WebRTC, embedding audio and video and sharing and some other capabilities in the browser. But we really see that WebRTC is something that is super important. It's actually something that we're leveraging in our next generation with our next browser. And we're also working on the interoperability story with other companies, like Google and some others in the market. So WebRTC becomes really important when you want to have a very seamless experience, right? So I take the browser, I have the same scenario with audio and video and so on, but I do not need to install anything anymore, because the capabilities, the technology is part of the browser itself. So we see WebRTC a little bit different on the desktop side than on the mobile side, and we think that mobile will take a little bit longer, because there are so many different, I would say, technical barriers in all of the different platforms in front of us. But WebRTC is something that we have as one of the big priorities for our next generation in the browser, and you will see an update later on by the end of 2015.
Now, the other thing that comes into this is that as WebRTC is maturing, obviously you don't want to be held to sort of whatever the limitations are as the working groups are kind of moving things forward. So we've actually implemented a model that really thinks about having a media controller that knows how to talk to different media providers, including the Skype for Business plugin. But as we move forward, the WebRTC, whatever the local media stack will be there, so that actually provides you with a better experience, we think a more seamless experience for not only picking the best provider, but giving you a more sort of single instance way to work across different hosts and different providers. And it's coordinated with signaling. And so in running into situations where, for example, you have to retry, or you have to sort of think about maybe instancing in a new route, these are all things that now the controller can help moderate with the actual underlying media provider. So we think this is a great way for us to be able to build that foundation that will let you bring in and connect WebRTC as it matures and becomes available later in the year, but it also gives you the best of both worlds. Now, as we sort of move forward, another thing I wanted to talk about briefly was that object model. Now, one of the key things that we've done is if you've looked at UCWA and you've looked at UCWA and sort of looked at the RESTful message patterns that are there, you'll note that there's a lot of things that you have to sort of get right. You have to think about the sort of sequence and exactly the signaling of exactly what's happening when. And so what we've tried to do is to bring that into more of an object model-based approach, but still JavaScript, that allows you to actually think about how the application actually connects with common aspects like sign-in, like the ability to deal with people in groups, and the ability to deal with local devices like cameras and microphones and others. Now, to give you a sense of sort of what this looks like in a more simplified view, we talked about briefly the ability to show presence and have that synchronized with the presence that's coming from my Skype for Business client. Now, if any of you attended the foundation session, you might have seen that we had sort of this other demo that we put together, which is around a health provider, and it actually showed presence. And if you were wondering if that was actually mocked up or anything like that, let me show you actually what happens here. So now I've got my Skype for Business client, and in fact, I'm also signed in as Andy O'Donnell. And when I go ahead and hit busy, you'll notice that it actually also updates my presence on the web page. Now you say, okay, so what did you have to do? Was it a big plugin? Was it the client? Oh, it's because you have those things installed. Let me show you actually what that actually looks like from a code perspective. I'm showing you the snippet, not the entire page. But basically the set of code that we had to add was this function for subscribe presence, which basically allows me to register with the persons and groups manager to get the status and find out if it's changed. And this is using, again, that sort of persistent get so that I get notified. I don't have to refresh the page. I don't have to worry about a whole bunch of sort of other complicated interactions. I don't have to monitor a whole bunch of other RESTful messages. I'm able to basically just have this. Now, in this case, I'm doing some simple switching. And if I wanted to support sort of other types of presence statuses, I could do that. Or if I wanted to support the custom extensible presence model that we also support from 2013 that would give you a way to be able to tie those in with your presence and aggregate with other status information in your system. So again, this is a great example of being able to take something that would have been in USIWA a sort of more complicated message where I had to worry about the authentication token, I had to worry about when in the sequence was where was I at, do I have to worry about spinning up yet another HTTP connection, all of these things, and really bring this down into something that is very basically about just some simple JavaScript to make something simple work. So simple getting you simple, I like. Complex getting you simple doesn't really sort of have the trade-off that you want. So just to give you a sense of sort of how those things are coming together, again, if you are interested in going into more detail on the development implementation with the Web SDK, I strongly encourage you to go to the session tomorrow morning, 10:15, I believe, here in this level, and they'll go through a great example of how you can actually get started to build your own app, really sort of from end to end all the way through. So with that, what we wanted to do then was to come back and really just talk about sort of how we move forward from here and what does this actually sort of mean for you guys as we sort of come out of the conference.
Perfect. Let me switch here for a moment. Okay, touch is not enabled. Okay. So a couple of things that I said before at the beginning of the session. One thing is very important to, I think, to highlight. We have already a very important partner ecosystem around Link 2013 apps. Most of our partners are upgrading basically the apps to Skype for Business, so there's a community that we very much investing to, and also it's very important for Microsoft. If you go to the website today, or if you open up Bing or Google, whatever, and you search for Link qualified apps or Skype for Business qualified apps, you will actually go to a website, or you will find a website, and you will find in different categories partner solutions. So as we are opening up the Skype developer platform, and we want to have much more companies and partners and developers writing applications on the top of not only the Web SDK, but also the existing APIs and SDKs, and the upcoming ones for future releases, we're going away from a qualification program into something where everyone can basically write an application and publish it to customers. And for that, what we're launching in around a couple of weeks is a new website. It will have partner solutions on where you can actually see the partner solution in a short video. You can have the contact information of the partner. You will find a reference to MSDN, a reference to our new developer site, developer.skype.com, and so on. So you can get ready on what's there in the ecosystem, how does it look like, and maybe also get an idea on your app itself. Okay, so a couple of things to wrap up. The developer program. So Office 365 has a developer program. There's a lot of information available that you have on the link here. So please visit the link. There are tools, there are free tools basically. There are trainings, the video training and so on that you can watch to get up to speed on how you write apps, not only for Skype for Business, but also in Office 365 ecosystem and on the top of Office 365 services. And that brings me to the Office 365 network that is available. So there's an expert network where you can get connected. The link is on the right corner from my view. So if you click there, you have more information on how you can connect to other developers and experts that already wrote applications or are part of this expert network. Okay. So tomorrow is Thursday, and we have a couple of interesting sessions coming up. So here's the summary of sessions that I hope we see you as an attendee. We have one session that is very technical from Sri and David here in the front, so they're here if you have questions. Andy said it before. And we have more ISV and partner apps that we are showing, like Clarity, Genesis, Verber, Evernet. There's so many different partner solutions that we want to show you tomorrow, and there's another session then in the afternoon where you can see that live. It's basically a demo fest where we try for all the live demos and partners that already used the Skype developer platform to come up with their application. So, call to action. I said before we have a new website. This is the link again, developer.skype.com. From developer.skype.com you find a lot of resources, also what you can do with Skype and Skype for Business. You find a description there. You find also the link where you can download the Web SDK preview, very important if you want to start with something, of course. Yeah, and I think the last thing that we ask you is to hopefully like our session, provide us positive feedback. Everything was live, so a lot of effort, and we're looking forward to hear from you. And if you have questions, there are microphones, and we are taking questions now. Thank you.
We have T-shirts
And we have T-shirts.
for good questions.
Skype T-shirts.
Yeah, come on
okay,
up.
please.
So the Skype web UI, does that do call transfer, all the call handling features currently, or is it just a simple connect the audio call?
For the button,
Yeah. Well, the Skype web.
so for the Web SDK, it basically handles a collection of transfer capabilities. We're going to be adding more as we go through with additional previews and additional releases. So the expectation, and we've talked about this briefly, but really the foundation is that we're building our first-party products on the Web SDK. And so the things that we're using there are the things that we're making available for third parties. And so as we enrich sort of those experiences, you're going to get the benefit of all of those capabilities that are going to come through.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, with the 3 different deployment methods for Skype for Business, Skype for Business Server, hybrid, and online.
Yes.
What impact, if any, does that have on the availability of the SDK?
So that's a great question. So the question is what impact does the availability of the SDK have with respect to support for hybrid or on-prem or online? Today, the preview requires that you have on-prem, but as we move forward and towards release, we'll actually be supporting any of those models. So it's absolutely going to be coming to online. One thing to note with online is that you'll be able to have a very integrated story with the rest of the Office 365 developer experience. So getting a client ID, being able to publish OAuth, things like that, will all be integrated with that. But it allows you to actually work across the properties very
So
seamlessly.
you'll be able to use UCMA on the online?
So UCMA Online is a conversation we'll talk more about in the near future. Yeah.
In the demo that you had, there was no client software on either the customer support guy or the customer.
Yeah, so in both cases, the expectation, I did show some examples where I had the link, the Skype for Business desktop client installed, but it's not required. So what is handled is as part of using the Web SDK, if you need audio and video, then you have the ability to download the plugin. That's separate from the desktop client. If you don't need audio and video, if you just want to do presence and signaling, you don't need any plugin at all. You can basically just use the JavaScript.
And then will that functionality work with the Skype for Business online as well?
Yeah, so previous to the similar question, when those things are working, we'll have support for online here shortly, and then you'll be able to make those calls directly between the two.
And when you say shortly?
We haven't announced a final date for that yet, but it will be soon.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Is it expected to work for Samsung tablet devices and iPads?
So the question is will the Web SDK work for tablet, Samsung devices and iPads? Our expectation is that the plugin supports a variety of platforms today, primarily around Mac OS and Windows.
Okay.
For Android, we're working on the WebRTC front so that you'll use the local media provider when it's available.
Okay.
Yeah.
Will the Web SDK support the concept of like impersonation? So the agent side, let's say, would be anonymous or a specific contact, but the client, their contact information and presence and stuff will flow through. You support that in UCMA now. I just was wondering if that was going to extend to it.
Yeah, so the question is will we be able to sort of proxy impersonation or on behalf of types of conversations through the Web SDK?
Yes.
Short answer is yes, we will be able to do those. Those will be coming in subsequent previews. Okay. So in the current preview today, you do need to sign in, but in very near term, we'll have the ability for you to be able to choose either guest or full anonymous. Other questions? Yes.
So if you get a point-to-point, either voice or video communication going over, let's say WebRTC.
Yes.
But let's say from our perspective as a provider, we actually want that traffic to flow through something that we can either log or monitor or somehow enrich it. How easy is that to do?
So the question I think is really about if you need to be able to take what would normally be negotiated as a point-to-point call for media and you want that to go into some other provider or some other route, can you do that? So typically the way that's handled on the Skype for Business or the Link historically side has been that you actually end up basically doing a back-to-back call into a conference, and then that way everybody's going through the MCU for media at that point. So in that model, that's where I would probably suggest you start is that you use your back-end solution to basically be able to reroute the call through the MCU.
That would work with video as well as voice.
That will end up working with video, and this is part of the multi-point control pieces for video that we're adding. There are some improvements for video in UCMA and some bugs that we're fixing on that. So again, these are things that will be popping out here soon.
Got it. Great. Thank you.
Great.
Hi. You did a lot of demo work with the web APIs and the web controls. Will there be an equivalent version of those controls or some sample of them that you can use in a native application?
Yeah, so the question is what's the story for native apps? And when you say native apps, are you thinking about Win32? Are you thinking about mobile? Are you thinking about UAP? All of the above?
All of the above, yeah.
So there are aspects of the web SDK today that you can actually use in mobile apps right now. Most of that, the fastest way for you to get going on that is probably going to be to talk UCWA directly from a web service perspective. We'll have more to talk about on the mobile front with respect to controls and media as we get sort of further in the year. We're doing a lot of work on that area, but it also involves sort of what's happening on the media stack and some other pieces there.
Thanks.
But in the near term, if you have solution, I would say, again, this is where even simple things like the call button are actually important. But then we'll also be able to take, if you don't need media, even some of the signaling stuff can actually get you started.
Yep. Actually, two questions related. One is if you have a call that has multiple media, let's just say you have the video, you want to set up the video and you want to have an IM and you want to record it.
Okay.
What is the call setup time if you're trying to do this in high volume?
Because
it wasn't clear from your demonstration how long it takes to set up calls.
Yeah.
Like, if you're in a situation where you have 100 calls that you're processing, call setup time is important. Or if you have to transfer calls, the time to set up the transfer, the new person in, to move the call. What is the time on transfers or call setup?
So the question is what is the transfer time or what does it look like for call setup? We've seen different speeds. I would say maybe Dan can speak to some of the experiences that they have in terms of their production app. I would say internally to Microsoft, we see anywhere from a few seconds to as long as 10 or 15, depending on the network.
That's including recording, because I've actually heard much longer, that's why.
I guess my experience, and then I'd love to hear from Dan maybe, but my experience has been that a lot of it depends on sort of where your network routes are going. So for example, if your recording solution is sort of routing to someplace completely different, then that can actually drive extended setup times. So this is where I come back, and I think we've seen the more you can sort of focus on those network diagnostics with things like the SDN interface to really understand sort of where the routes are, that can help to...
Yeah, in this case it really was not, didn't seem to be the problem elsewhere. The problem seemed to be getting the server, the link server really to do the call setup.
Yeah. The short answer is it really depends how much time it takes. It depends what kind of joins you're doing. If you're doing a conference join versus a two-party join, it depends.
These are conference joins, because I said, because it's a multimedia, you want recording, you want to be able to have supervisor join, and
you join to a conference without the endpoint negotiating conference media if you're going through a back-to-back call. If you're going through a back-to-back call, the negotiation done by the client is a two-party negotiation. If you're joining it through the conference directly, then you're doing the full conference negotiation, and that's going to take longer, especially if you're working on a desk device that may be underpowered. Also, if you're working in any sort of environment where there's latency between the database server, the front-end server that's running the conference MCU, and the user, all those pieces, the latency between those is going to have an impact on how long it takes to negotiate. So I think take a look at your network, take a look at any sort of packet shaping you have in place, take a look at how the joins are being connected to the conference, and take a look at the hardware that's in place. All those can have a big impact on how long the connection process takes.
Okay, I'll agree.
I guess another thing could be, yeah. So another thing could be that if you are not already setting up the conference bridge, the MCU before, and you have to create an MCU on the fly, that could be a problem. Right?
And that's a great example, actually. So I think whether you're using MCU pools and like reconnecting, or whether you're having to basically do sort of new provisioning for every single call, some of those things can make a difference.
So with these APIs you were talking about, like the Skype API, can you do the sort of pre-create the pools, conference pools?
So the pre-creation for the conferencing pools is actually something that's more of a backend capability that you do through UCMA today. And so you can have the ability to pre-create those pools when you're writing the UCMA app. And so that would be where I would start. And then obviously as we move forward, we'll have more to talk about with respect to online for something like that. Thank you. All right, with that, we are 3 minutes over. Thanks, everybody. We'll be available offline if you want to talk for call. Yay.